This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I'm really excited for a couple of reasons today. First of all, my next guest, I think this is possibly the second or third time we were supposed to meet, but we've managed to do it. We've managed to beat, allergies, illness, things happening in the world. But secondly, this guest is my first from Austin in America. So I'd like to welcome to you all today. This is Thad Price, and he's the CEO of Talroo. Welcome to today, Thad. How are you?
Hi, Leisha. I'm great. How are you? Thanks for the invite. I'm glad we were finally able to connect together.
Finally, and it's been so lovely to get to know you off camera. And obviously, you're my first Thad. We've already had that conversation. I don't think anyone has ever met a Thad before. It's a wonderful name. It's got family provenance. Is that what you said?
That's right. That's right. It was my great-grandfather's name, and then it was my grandfather's middle name. And so here I am.
Here you are now with the most wonderful back. For anyone watching on YouTube, I think you'll agree that I think Thad's background, we can see a little skeleton in the back as well. Very cool. So for those who are not yet familiar with you, but they'll certainly be clicking away on LinkedIn to see what you do, give us an overview of what you do and what your business does.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Thad Price, nice to meet all of you. Thank you for listening in today. We really appreciate it. A little bit about Talroo. We help companies find unique audiences for their jobs. We take more of a programmatic approach, finding the right profiles of job seekers to advertise your jobs. And we help companies advertise those jobs, and we focus on downstream data in the applicant tracking system. And also we allow companies to stand up hiring events where you can hire in mass for certain locations. So all of those products are available in what we refer to as the Talroo ad platform, and help companies attract talent outside of some of the larger job boards that you may currently be using.
And you'll all be nodding away as to why we invited that on today, because I think that any recruiter listening, wherever you are in the world, and we are very grateful for anyone dropping in wherever you're based, you are probably in a talent short market. I will eat my hat if you're not. So that's one of the main reasons we wanted to invite that on today. And because you are our first guest from Austin, what's it like over there? I believe it's an absolutely beautiful part of the USA.
It is magical right now. This is the best time of year to visit Austin. We've got Austin City Limits, which is going on now. Wow. Number of festivals in town. We have F1, which is happening soon as well. So it is a great time to visit Austin, and the weather here is just beautiful. We'll be in the 70s today, which will be fantastic. The great thing about Austin is, we were chatting earlier, that there aren't a lot of places where you can be 30 minutes from a lake, 30 minutes from a hill country, or 30 minutes from a vibrant downtown. So we arrived here about 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago now, from the Bay Area. Our business was incubated in the Bay Area, and we were in the first wave, or maybe the second wave of folks 10 years ago moving from the Bay Area. And it's been just terrific. A lot of focus around entrepreneurship here. You can hire great talent. There's no reason. There's definitely a reason why a lot of companies are relocating to Austin and investing in the city.
I'm nodding away because our audience is obviously predominantly recruiters, and out of that, we predict it's probably about 50% leaders. And we have a lot of our clients looking at Austin as a desirable location if they're either looking to first move to the States, or relocate from other areas like San Francisco, where it's notoriously very expensive to hire good recruiters because it's the cost of living over there. So I've already said it, I've got a little pin in the map. I need to come over and see for myself. I believe it's an absolutely beautiful place. And I think March, you said there's a digital event there for a week.
Yes, it's South by Southwest. That's a great experience as well. If you haven't visited Austin in March, it's a great time of the year to visit as well. Terrific opportunity.
Great.
To speak to Austin a little bit, it was interesting. Probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I was chatting with our commercial real estate broker, and at that time there were a lot of large companies relocating to Austin. And I asked him, I said, why do you think that is? What's the data that points to why Austin is such a great place? And he was actually representing Google at the time, and shared that, from his perspective, there's higher productivity than other areas. And I think it is all about work-life balance. And you find that in a community like Austin. And I think that's what it's all about. So if you can drive up productivity, and you can have a great place to live, then that's what it's all about. That's why so many companies win-win. That's why so many companies are moving here.
Oh, no, that's lovely. And we'll definitely, I mean, if you're listening to this now via LinkedIn, come back into LinkedIn, circle back and tell us if you've been to Austin, and share a photo as well. We want to see where you visited. We want to see pictures of all the beautiful lakes and mountains and the downtown vibe as well. So let's jump in then. So, I mean, I said in the intro that I doubt there will be a listener anywhere in the world that isn't in some kind of talent short market, whether it's lawyers, whether it's, healthcare workers, whether it's recruiters like me. There doesn't seem to be enough talent out there. So in your experience, what do you think recruiters need to be doing to make themselves stand out to the unicorn candidates?
Yeah, I think the first thing is taking a marketing approach. Think about the idea of product marketing. At the end of the day, you're representing a company, or, and you're selling the opportunity to the candidate. Mm-hmm. And when we think about this idea of product marketing, I think we can apply it to marketing in one way is battle cards. When you think of the idea of this, when you invest in companies, you basically say, okay, why would a company buy my product over my competitor's product? And usually the thought process is you boil it down to a few bullet points. Here are all the competitors that my buyers are actually, looking at and making a decision around. And so I think that one great way to think about that is with your company. Think about your competitors. If you're recruiting talent specifically from a competitor, or that you're actually recruiting against your competitors, think about why that candidate should come to your company and write it out. Create these battle cards, competitor 1, competitor 2, competitor 3, and why you're a better option than your competitors. And so then people ask me, where do I find that data? Glassdoor. It's a great place, right? You can actually read through what's happening. You can see what's happening. You can actually also read through job descriptions, look at the benefits, compare your benefits to your benefits. Remember, the whole idea is you have to stand out to the candidate as something different. People want something different. And if you can provide that to them, you have a great opportunity to actually land that candidate.
I like the idea of the comparison cards, the battle cards, as you call them. It's, it's like top trumps, isn't it? It's actually seeing for yourself, and you can make that comparison. I think our brain will automatically go to the one where what's most important to me. So you might say, well, I want a company that has, over 20 employees, but actually to me, there might be a section on there of how many days they're in the office. That's more important to me. So I think it's a really visual way. I've never ever had that said in that way before, and I think that's actually quite effective. But I agree with you. What is your unique differentiator as a business, and live by that? I think I don't know in your experience, but far too many employers want to sort of plagiarize and be like everybody else, but actually stand by your uniqueness, because that will attract the right people to your business, the right unicorns.
A great example is our company. So we've been recruiting engineers heavily, and here we are in Austin, which is we're competing against some of the Meta, Indeed, others here in Austin, that Google, that are expanding. And one of the things that's been unique for us is when we find an engineer that really embraces entrepreneurship and autonomy. That's really important for us, because we have a small engineering team, and it's hard for us to compete against some of the large brands. But when you find an engineer that really wants entrepreneurship and wants to make an impact, that's what it's all about. Yeah. And I think the other piece of this, when you think of battle cards, so let's put battle cards in a box for a while. The other is really understanding the persona that you're looking to attract, right? And that's another cue from marketing. You think of who is your, we always talk about who is your ideal customer persona, your ICP. There's also an ideal candidate persona, ICP, which is how do we make sure that what we're doing is actually attracting that candidate. And it starts in many times with the job posting and the sourcing strategy. And again, if you think about battle cards, ideal candidate persona, all of these things are important. There are so many strategies from marketing that we can apply to sourcing, recruitment marketing, and of course, the art and science of recruiting.
And writing job adverts, which generally speaking, recruiters don't tend to do as brilliantly as maybe a marketing person would. So what would your advice be on that? How would you write something that's really compelling, that doesn't sound like everyone else's? Our client is hiring. I mean, just delete straight away. So how do you make yourself stand out?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would go back to the battle cards, like research your competitors, see if there's something that's different about your opportunity compared to all the other opportunities that are in that are out there today in the market. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing that I would do is think interest the reader. You know, back in the days of our writing classes, when we're trying to grab attention, it's the same thought process. The other piece is transparency. Transparency is very important today. And the reason why transparency in the job description is very important is because job seekers their candidates are going to find out. They're going to research, they're going to read, they're going to understand. I had someone share with me in an interview that I've been using in a number of my conversations, that retention starts with the job posting. You know, in some cases, I think we can be a little bit too puffy in how we think about job description. And so then we write this great job description. And so, you know, we look at reality and it may be a little off. So I think we have to start with the basics of, all right, how is this job different than every other job out there? And if you start with that key, then that can help drive a lot of your decision-making process on actually how you write the all-powerful job description.
And actually how you then interview and hire and match up against it. It's an internally benchmark. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, just, you know, if we look at what the narrative is in the society that we live in, and I know we live on the other side of the globe to each other, but the societies are absolutely the same. That people do due diligence. You know, they only have to go on Glassdoor. They only have to go and have a look at Google reviews. They only have to go and look on your Instagram or your endorsements on LinkedIn to see whether it's all absolute nonsense as an employer, whether you're telling the truth or not. And if they see on your company page on LinkedIn this, you know, rotating door of people just coming and going, and there's no tenure, then you saying on a job description, you know, great business. Well, no, you're not a great business. So I agree with you. I think that transparency is really important. And, you know, write the advert for the person that you're trying to attract.
Exactly. The ICP, ideal candidate persona.
Yeah.
That's who you're looking to attract.
I think that's really, really great advice, actually. Now, you know, in terms of, you obviously are the expert in terms of the job board itself. Obviously, you've created a destination for your clients to come onto there. But where else do you think we should be advertising? So what I'm thinking here is, should people be sharing their job adverts on LinkedIn? Do people actually click through? What about TikTok? What about Instagram? What's your view on a broader social media strategy on job adverts?
Yeah, so I think of social media, and I think of the other placements as ways to augment a core strategy. So job boards are very powerful. You know, they're very powerful at providing you with candidates, hopefully great candidates. And from a quality perspective, you know, they provide a huge value to the ecosystem. Where I think that there's a lot of opportunity with job boards is optimizing what we're doing with job boards. Right. I think that there's, you know, in at least, you know, over the last 20 years, I've heard the term, you know, post and pray, right? I post a job and I pray I get the right candidates. Really, I think job boards should be post and produce. Yeah. And so you post the job and you produce great quality candidates. And that's something that, you know, we're very focused here at Talroo. And so the first thing I would do is I would look at your marketing budget and I would look at where you're sourcing today and saying, all right, what am I investing in job boards? And how can I make that more effective through some of the newer technologies that are available in the ecosystem today? It's not all about brand, right? It's about providing great candidates and quality of candidates. The second thing that I would do is I would think about a test budget with recruitment marketing around new channels. And I think the big thing that you'll find is a lot of the channels, TikTok and some of the others, YouTube as well, if you create more of an integrated marketing approach across what you're doing with job boards and what you're doing socially, I think the outcome is more powerful overall in a talent attraction strategy. And we see this in brand, right? You know, if you have an integrated marketing strategy with brand and other placements online, ad placements online, whatever that may be, together, it's very powerful. Separate, it's not as powerful. So no. I think of this idea of actually an integrated approach, focusing on what's important and testing. But the first thing most people need to do is they need to optimize what they're spending on job boards.
Yeah, right? No, totally.
And then once you've optimized, you've found budget where you can try these other channels that are more effective.
Yeah, and then you can take a more
long-term value.
Yeah, and you can take a holistic approach is what you're saying. Basically, get the fundamentals right, the job board investment, making sure you're producing high quality adverts, you're utilizing that within your ATS system, and then creating this holistic view, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, whatever it might be, whatever the latest, who knows what the next one will be.
Well, absolutely. And if you think of going back to the all-powerful job advertisement, if you don't get that right, everything else downstream isn't effective.
No.
When you think of engaging in creative and you think of investing in social and TikTok and these other channels, they're important. But if your core is, I don't really understand the ideal candidate persona that I'm attracting with the job ad, or I'm attracting with video, I'm attracting with any of my outreach, then it's not going to be effective. You're not going to be able to drive as much value from your recruitment marketing dollars than you may think.
Now, as we record this at the end of 2022, we are in quite an unsettled world. There's a worldwide recession. There's the cost of living crisis. I think it's across the whole globe. Obviously, the war in Ukraine. There's a lot of unsettlement, and that can create a bit of a disparity in terms of some markets potentially where there's been very high fast growth, and it could create a bit of a cascade of candidates, potentially a bit of a tsunami, who knows, we hope not. However, this could mean then that you've done all that work as a recruiter, you've done your adverts, you've done all the things that you've said, you've got your strategies in place across all your different channels, utilizing the job boards effectively. We're then getting the candidates into the ATS system. How does a recruiter ensure they're not missing out on a less obvious match, maybe, or they're not spending all their time, and I don't like to use this word, but sifting through and wasting their time where they just need to go for the golden nuggets? What would your advice be?
My advice would be, think about your process and where you're spending time. There are many tools today that can optimize that process for you. And what I mean by that is if that pendulum swings where you're spending a lot of time with candidates, you're sifting through resumes, you have too many candidates and the market has changed, then think about time blocking where you're spending your time, and then start to research solutions that may be able to help you be more effective at getting to the candidates that are the right candidates. And also, if we go back to that idea of the job posting, remember what I said earlier, retention starts with a job posting. In that situation, you should be even, more candid and transparent in the job posting than you were, because you have so many candidates, right? Because you really want to focus on the quality candidates that want to come work for your organization or come experience the opportunity that you're providing. So a great example of this is, we work with a number of conversational AI tools that essentially act as a recruiting assistant. And, as a recruiting assistant, they ask qualifying questions, and it's a chatbot, right? A chatbot lives in the experience, and they'll surface qualifying questions that are really important to the employer. Well, by surfacing those qualifying questions earlier in the process, you can actually filter out candidates that may not meet those qualifications.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what happens today with applicant tracking systems is the qualifying questions or the screening questions are asked at the end of the process. You've been through the 30 or 40-minute process, and then you answer the questions. And so one of the keys that I think's been important for companies over the last few years is if we can set expectations of the job seeker early and often, and by early and often surface those screening questions at time of apply versus in the moment of applying, before you apply, then you can be a lot more effective for the job seeker and a lot more effective for the recruiter in a world where there are a lot more applicants than we've had in the past.
But do you think people lie? If people are desperate for a job, do you think they lie on those chatbots?
Yeah, I think they could. But I think that's in any market.
Yeah,
right.
Of course it is. But I think that's really useful and actually a really obvious thing to do. So for example, your customers, when they post an advert, they get the opportunity to add that, or is it just automatically there in your software that they get to sift people out by these chatbots?
Yeah, so we have a couple products. We have a product where you can ask screening questions that isn't a chatbot attached to jobs. So, a number of our customers will ask a few screening questions before they're connected to the ATS. So again, I think the problem is the black hole problem that we've been talking about for the last 30 years, 20 years, since the dawn of online recruiting has been, I apply for a job and I don't hear back. I think one of the reasons why people don't hear back is because job seekers are applying for jobs they aren't necessarily qualified for. And our industry, in most cases, human resources recruiting is a nice industry. It's a relationship driven. It's hard to say no.
Yeah.
Right. And because of that, if we can surface those questions earlier in the process and let them know, hey, you're probably not a fit for this, then you can somehow do your part. We can do our part in the industry to combat this black hole that occurs. So we have that. We also have partnerships with other companies like Zor and Paradox that actually will surface those questions, and you can use their chat bot to actually ask questions, and we'll surface those questions and then connect directly to the applicant tracking system in many cases. Good. And we've seen that's been helpful at helping recruiters get to the right candidates, because essentially what happens is that's your screening call.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
It's a screening call that would happen. And so in those situations, but I think the big punchline here is, when this occurs, it's going to occur. It's just the inevitable, when the pendulum swings, which it does, that you have to time box and find where you're spending your time, and then start researching solutions that can help you, get more time back in your day and use technology that may be optimizing that experience for you.
And this is where technology, absolutely, the sector has evolved. I mean, I think it probably is about 20 years of job boards, probably. I've been in recruitment 24, and they were just kind of coming into play. But I think that you're absolutely right. The market moves in cycles. We're in an absolute bubble. It's going to potentially, in some markets, go the other way and the pendulum will swing. This is brilliant advice, Thad. Honestly, this is really useful. So one final piece of advice from you, in your experience, if somebody's listening now and they're not happy in their job for whatever reason, how do they make themselves stand out so they become the unicorn candidate on the response to the job advert? So from the other side of the desk.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is speak to the old saying of speak to your accomplishments. That's the key. In so many when you're interviewing and when you're having a number of conversations with candidates, it's different in what you did or what you're doing versus what you accomplished.
Yeah.
And accomplishments are what businesses bank on.
Yeah.
Especially recruiters, right? And that's a frame of mind in a lot of ways. So focus on your accomplishments and why you're proud of those accomplishments. That's the first thing. The second thing I would do is research the company. You can go on LinkedIn, research the company, research the hiring manager, the recruiter. If you see a position that you really like, and try to, update your resume based on how your experience reflects what that company needs. I think as an industry, the cover letter has lost its appeal in many ways.
Yeah.
And because the cover letter has lost its appeal, I think that there's the opportunity to actually use some creative experiences with maybe a cover letter to then help actually impact your resume. Try to think of what you would generally add in a cover letter and try to distill pieces for a position in your resume, since the cover letter has lost appeal in many ways. So that's how I would think about it, right? I would think those two opportunities for candidates.
I think that's really good advice. I love that. Focusing on accomplishments. I love that. It's very positive. It's a positive mindset, but you're making yourself a no-brainer to whether it's the internal recruiter, whether it's the final decision maker. And I really absolutely advocate that advice. I always recommend to candidates that if you see a job description or a job advert and you know what your experience is in relation to that, make it a no-brainer. And covering letters, it sounds old-fashioned. It's quite a laborious thing to do, and I hate the whole copy and paste where you'd send it out to 20 companies. But you can make yourself an absolute, I'll use the expression again, this no-brainer to the decision maker by inserting where you've done the experience that they're advertising. So I think it's really, really good experience, and it's been so refreshing to hear it from your side of the world, because I don't think we've had anyone on from a job board before. So I hope that you have a wonderful 2023. I'm hoping you'll be kept as busy as you have been this year, which is why it's taken us all this time to get you on. We got there in the end. It's been wonderful to have you today, Thad. Thank you so much for joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.
Thank you so much. Have a terrific day. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome.